Today, we become legends.
So I've recently done my top 10 favourite Smite gods. Check out that video if you haven't already, link in the description. It's only natural that I do my top 10 least favourite gods as well. It's even more important for this video that I stress that this is just my opinion, and if your favourite god is on this list, it doesn't mean the god's trash or you should stop playing them. Play whoever you want and give the finger to anyone who tells you otherwise. These are just my personal least favourite gods, though I will try to explain the objective factors about their designs that I don't like in order to justify these placements, rather than just saying, I hate this god cause reasons. But anyway, enough preamble, let's jump in with number 10. So my number 10 least favourite god is Hell. You'll see later on this list that healers in general are designs that I don't particularly like, but just being a healer isn't enough to warrant getting a spot on this list. I feel like the main reason I dislike Hell is because of the players. She seems to be designed somewhat as a kind of battle medic, where she's in the fight dealing big damage as well as big healing, and I almost never see that playstyle actually adopted by the Hell player base. They just seem to sit back, often with a defense item or two, and just spam healing on their team, and I find it really boring and uninteractive. Especially when half the time my team don't buy anti-heal or focus her correctly and she lives with 10% health after a dive and then heals her whole team to full afterwards. She is only number 10 on the list though, because sometimes I can deal with a Hell, especially if they're playing a bit more fast and loose, which I think is the playstyle she was more designed for, but in general I rarely have fun playing against Hell. Moving into number 9 we have another mage, and that's Hades. I'll say this right off the bat that I have very few issues with mid or jungle Hades. The reason this god is on the list is because of his solo lane presence. No matter who you're playing, your playstyle, your skill level, whatever, if the enemy picks Hades, they've won the lane. That's my main problem with this god. Not only does he have some of the best wave clear in the entire game, he also heals for half his health bar every single wave, so trying to win a poke wall with him isn't going to work. And he heals his own minions as well, so trying to burst down his wave usually doesn't work unless you can one-shot the wave, which won't happen until a fair few levels and items in. I guess it's similar to Hell in a way in that it's just an extremely uninteractive playstyle that's no fun for either player. You just sit back and watch the Hades press 2 and 3 on the wave over and over again and then collect their wave as it comes to your tower. If the Hades player is even half decent, there's zero kill potential on either player in this matchup, and the lane just becomes stale where Hades slightly edges out a lead over time, but then when it comes to late game teamfights he'll often do more work than the Hades even from behind. But that's enough Hades ranting, let's move on. So at number 8, we're moving away from mages and heading down to Baka. This is honestly a similar case to Hades, but in jungle instead of solo. Bakasura players more often than not just adopt the most uninteractive, passive farm playstyle in existence for the first 15 minutes of the match. Just farming their own camps and occasionally invading yours because he has the best camp secure in the entire game early on. Often they'll even build Golden Blade to farm even faster, and when they're done with their AFK farming, they'll come out of the woodwork at 15 minutes into the game with a 4-level lead on your entire team and just vomit onto your backline and get a deicide, which will often snowball the game in his favour. You might be seeing a trend here where I really don't like uninteractive playstyles where there's very little I can do to interrupt what the enemy is trying to do and force something to happen. If a Baka doesn't want to fight, he'll just never even show his face and run from you if you do find him and go back to farming. It's just a very boring playstyle in my opinion, and it deserves a number 8 placement. Number 7 is one you guys probably expected to see on this list somewhere, and that's Persephone. Now, I have limited experience with her rework, so take my opinion with a grain of salt here, and I'll be taking into account both her original design and her rework. But in general, they're largely the same, and not too much was changed in terms of her core design with the rework. So Persephone is just frustrating. That's the best word to describe how she feels, mainly to play against, but even to play as sometimes. Her ultimate punishing you for your teammates' mistakes, her old passive rewarding her for playing badly, and her new passive being utterly boring and pretty useless, her massive range that was admittedly toned down slightly with the rework but is still pretty insane and she'll outpoke almost any other god in the game. This one is probably one of the less controversial picks on this list, as from what I've seen in the community, especially my community, is that Persephone is not regarded too highly. I think before the rework she would have been higher up the list for me, so I guess at least the rework did some small good in terms of making her a little bit less frustrating. Coming in at number 6 we have Artio. Now the following 3 picks could honestly be in any order, so Artio could absolutely be number 5 or number 4 to be honest. The main reason for me hating Artio is probably pretty obvious, the 6-second mobile AoE cripple. This just completely annihilates a fair few gods like King Arthur and Fenrir, and does a number on the vast majority of gods since most use movement in some way or another. Artio also just completely comes across as very spammy to me. That might seem like a very wishy-washy complaint to have, but the amount of people I see claiming that Arthur is a spammy face roll character that needs no skill, Artio is an even worse offender in this regard in my opinion. It could just be that I'm better at Arthur and I know more things to do on him than I am at Artio, but you seem to at least have to think when you use certain abilities with Arthur. With Artio, it seems like you just spam whenever something comes off cooldown aside from the cripple, I guess. But even then, you can just dive the backline, put the cripple on, and then spam your buttons on people. I don't know, it's just a really unfun playstyle in my opinion, but it is just that, my opinion. So breaking the top 5, we have CHANG'E. This one is actually kinda hard to put into words on why I dislike her, I just know I do. I think with CHANG'E, it's less so one huge thing I have a problem with and more like death by 1,000 cuts. She has so many small issues that bug me rather than one big thing. Her constant annoying 1 spam, immunity, healing, potentially a 5-second stun when even a 2-second stun without bees usually means you're dead in Smite. The rabbit means she can play like an idiot and have access to more potions and easier farming than other characters. I don't know, like I said, it's kind of hard to put into words exactly what I don't like about CHANG'E, so if you guys dislike her too, maybe you can give a more elegant reason in the comments why. But coming in at number 4 is SKADI. This is probably another one that most of you besides the ADC mains probably agree with. The meme about Calder being the god and SKADI being the pet is obviously hyperbole, but it is rooted in truth. You can get so much work done just by putting Calder on someone and pressing 4 when he gets low without even hitting a single basic attack or ability. It's all done for you. I mentioned earlier on in the video that uninteractive elements of a god's kit is a key thing I look for in gods that I don't like. And Calder is pretty much as uninteractive as it gets. You literally just target someone and press 4, it can't miss, you don't need any skill to do so, the enemy can't really do anything about it besides focusing him down, which leaves the SKADI player to do whatever the hell she wants. And even if you try to burst Calder down, she can full heal him with her ult. That's my main problem with SKADI, but there's also her ice, which is by no means getting a free pass. This has to be hands down one of the most annoying and inconsistent CCs in the entire game, and you really never know what's going to happen every time you step on it. But moving on, first to break the top 3 is Nox. This one is pretty interesting with Nox because I'm really split down the middle on her. I love the design of her 3 and her ult, but I hate the design of her passive 1 and 2. But given the 3 is mainly just used to escape and the ult is on a long cooldown, the 1 and 2 are pretty much all you ever see a Nox using, and boy is this combo annoying to deal with. If the Nox player is half decent and can hit this even 50% of the time, you're basically not going to have bees for the rest of the game and or eat 50 to 80% of your health bar on cooldown depending on the stage of the game that you're in. But if the Nox player is extremely predictable or just bad, this combo becomes utterly useless and thus the god itself becomes almost useless. And it always seems to be that my Noxes have a 10% hit rate on this combo while the enemy Noxes have a 90% hit rate. I know that's not the case, but that's how it feels sometimes. But yeah, this combo is basically the entire reason Nox is on this list, but I hate it so much that despite her having some other good design aspects, she still makes it into the top 3. But my number 2 most hated god in Smite is Arachne. Yeah, I know I'm kinda known as that guy who hates the Spoda, and to be honest, Arachne and my number 1 placement are extremely close and could be switched. But as for Arachne, there is basically nothing I like about this design. I guess the webs are fine and the one isn't terrible, just very boring. The rest of her kit though absolutely needs a rework in my opinion. 2 steroids on a single god, especially basic attack steroids, just doesn't really work. Her ultimate is only ever used to run away from fights when Arachne mains inevitably bite off more than they can chew. While they have made an effort to force Arachne players to ult aggressively, such as the web area on landing, it's still used the vast majority of the time as an escape, which for an ultimate is just sad. Her passive is extremely boring, her playstyle is the very definition of feast or famine. Thanatos is often touted as the design to look for in what snowball means, but Arachne is a better example in my opinion. She snowballs way harder and is actually more useless late game than Thanatos is. At least Thana can utilise the execute to pick off key targets in the late game. With Arachne, unless you're massively ahead from snowballing the early game, you're going to be useless in the later stages. And finally, my number 1 least favourite god in the game is one that you guys probably will agree with, and that's Aphrodite. Where do I even start with Aphro really? She's a healer, already annoying, but as I said earlier, being a healer doesn't put you on this list by default. Many healers like Guan Yu, Sylvanas, Ra and others are pretty decent designs in my opinion. To be honest, I think problems arise when the character's primary design aspect is to be a healer, such as Aphro, CHANG'E and to some extent Hel. Guan, Sylvanas, Ra, Terra, etc. all have healing as a more secondary trait and have other interesting design aspects to go off of. Aphro though is pretty much just a heal bot with the most annoying ult in the entire game. Immunity to literally everything on a relatively low cooldown with full CDR, at least compared to alternatives like Aegis. It's just not it, chief. This video is meant to be about the gods and for the others it pretty much was, but I also have to mention the Aphro player base with this one, which seems to be 10% decent players and the other 90% are either toxic, complete noobs, or both. This is the second god on the list along with Arachne that I think could use a rework. I'd really like to see her embrace the support mage style a lot more, but tone down the major frustration factors she brings to the game and put her healing on a back burner a little bit. But that's just one man's opinion. Let me know what you think of these gods in the comments down below and drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.